Every year in April, there's one bait that outshines all the rest of them, especially if you're in the Northeast. Today, I'll be having my first guest on the channel who happens to be an expert at fishing this bait, and he's gonna share with you guys a few tips and secrets to hopefully get more fish in your boat this year. Intro. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dishes and Fishes, where I show you how to cook and set hooks. Today I'm out with Noah Winslow, the very accomplished local Connecticut angler who last year won a FLW Costa Series event on the St. Lawrence River as a co-angler. He does local guide trips in Connecticut, and today he's gonna show us how to put a hurting on these smallmouth. So check him out on Instagram at Noah's Guide Service, and today hopefully you'll get a little sneak peek into what he can offer you. So check him out.
So if you're starting out fishing hair jigs and have never done it before, it could be a little tricky, especially with a windy day or anything like that that's gonna cause not to have bottom contact. A lot of times in the spring, hair jig's an early season type bait when the water's still very cold, usually like just ice out. So you wanna make sure that you're fishing somewhere where those fish could go from deep to shallow water quickly, where they don't have to go up a flat and go a long distance. For example, in Connecticut where we are, there's a lot of rock walls that run into the lakes, and you could picture them as a ladder. So those fish use those to go from deep water to shallow water to transition from winter to the spawn. The other thing that you could look at is a bluff style bank, where it's vertical up and down, or something that's very steep, which you could just look at by looking at the map and where the contour lines are the closest. And then you want to pick out places that have a lot of rock and the little nooks and crannies within those bluffs. And then once you find the places that you're going to fish, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. For the most part, it's a slow drag. You're going to throw it out, let it hit the bottom, and you're just gonna slowly pull. I prefer to pull an upward motion, or you could just pull sideways like you would something else dragging on the bottom, such as a Ned rig or something like that. You just always wanna ensure that you have bottom contact the whole time, otherwise you're fishing the hair jig unproductive. The second way you could fish a hair jig is you could swim it, which it kind of contradicts dragging it on the bottom, but you always need it close to the bottom. And I found in certain days and times of the year, depending on what the fish are doing, they prefer a swim, where you throw it out and you still let it hit the bottom, but you just hold the rod tips, I would say a 45-degree angle in the air, and you just slowly reel. And every now and then just add a little pop into your retrieve, and that usually gets the fish going pretty good when they're not dead on the bottom and they're feeding just off the bottom. So when it comes to fishing the hair jigs, it's always on spinning tackle. I like to use two different types of spinning rods. One's a 7'4" Shimano Corrado drop shot rod, and the other one is a 6'7" Shimano Poison Adrena rod, and it's a medium light. Each of these rods, they both have 8-pound super slick Power Pro line, and then I use that to about a 10 to 15 foot 6 or 8-pound leader. Most times it's 6, but if you're in a lake like we're at today that has a lot of zebra mussels, I like using 8 to give you that little extra protection when you're dragging it through the rocks. When it's windy, you want a shorter rod, which is why I use the Poison Adrena, so it's closer to your body, so the wind and the rod isn't being blown around, so you could always feel bottom contact and light bites, which is very prevalent in the springtime. The longer rod is used to get a longer cast, and when you get hung up, you're up higher in the air, so when you go to pop it off, you're gonna get it out, because with a hair jig, you're always getting hung up. There's various different weights of jigs that everybody uses. Primarily, you're gonna use an 1/8 ounce, a 3/16, and a 1/4, but mostly an 1/8 and a 1/4. I like to use a 1/4 ounce on the 7'4" and an 1/8 ounce on the shorter rod on the Poison Adrena. The reason for using the 1/4 and 1/8 ounces, the 1/4 you're using on a windy day, 1/8 you're using on a calm day. There's a big difference when it comes down to this. A 1/4 ounce, even on a calm day, I like to use as my search bait. When I pull up to a spot, I could cast and I could find the exact cast I need to make every time to be productive. A lot of times you're trying to use the lightest jig you can because it looks the most natural, especially with a hair jig. I got one. So once I find it with the 1/4 ounce and the long rod, I'll switch over to the shorter rod with the 1/8 ounce and I'll make a precise cast right where it needs to be and drag it with that 1/8 ounce so the bait looks as natural as it could be, and it's gonna result in more bites. Got him. So I've been bass fishing in the spring and tournament fishing in the spring for a long time now. The month of April is my favorite time of year, especially in Connecticut. On this lake that we happen to be on today is one of the ones I was taught how to throw a hair jig a long time ago, and I could still think back to that day. It was almost exactly same conditions. We had about a 20 fish day and I caught the biggest smallmouth I've ever caught in Connecticut. And you know, ever since then, the hair jig fishing is always my go-to thing in the month of April.